to record this, feeling the beauty of that period of time where I'm really slowing down, attuning to what's wanting to be created and beginning to take steps towards birthing our Secret Witches Apothecary membership, which I'm so excited about and is coming soon, I promise. So that's what I've been working on. But I would also love to hear what you've been creating, experiencing, feeling, and going on over this wintry period. So if you feel called to share that with us and where you've been journeying, I would love for you to join us in our free Secret Witch Sisterhood whilst we're waiting for the membership. I know that can take really deep courage to step into. So especially for a secret witch who just wants to hide in the background. So I want you to know that if you've been loving this podcast and you really want to join a sisterhood, but you're like, oh, I'm not quite sure that I fit into a group. I'm not quite sure that I'm safe, or all of the things that come up for secret witches when they think about kind of reaching out to community. I want you to know that all parts of you are so welcome in my space. And I am totally in there, waiting to hold you and your tender heart. And that includes, even if you just want to pop in and sit in the background and watch what's going on. I know secret witches like to hide. And that is so, so welcome. So if that is you and you're feeling like, oh, I'm loving the podcast, I want a little bit more, and you want to be in sisterhood, then please do search Secret Witch on Facebook and find our group in there. Anyway, into the show. On today's Secret Witch show, our guest is Emma Griffin. Described as a real-life embodiment of Molly Weasley from Harry Potter, Emma is a modern-day full-time witch, healer and author whose work guides women back to alignment by reconnecting with the ancient wisdom of their ancestors. Rooted in the interconnectedness of nature and the soul, Emma's teachings aim to awaken the innate magic within us all, helping women rediscover their purpose and authentic selves. Emma's new book, The Witch's Way Home, serves as a roadmap for self-discovery, healing, and stepping into our authentic power. In this juicy episode, we explore Emma's personal journey marked by moments of stress, illness, grief, and self-discovery, and how it awakened her to the transformative self-healing power of witchcraft and ritual. Exploring challenges like infertility and cancer diagnosis, we explore how healing the witch wound, aka reclaiming our true, authentic, full expression of who we are, can help us to manifest health. Diving into ancient feminine ancestral wisdom, seasonal living, emotional release, and the importance of presence, self-love, and sisterhood, we explored the healing process and how the witch can help us to reclaim ourselves. Let's dive in. Welcome, Emma. Oh, my heart. I'm so delighted to welcome you to the show. I came across you, I think, on Instagram recently, and I just really knew you were a kindred spirit. So I was like, do you know what? I'm going to invite you on the show, and here we are. So I can't wait to dive in. I suspect there's going to be some really juicy similarities in our journeys. And of course, some unique differences as well, because we all have our unique medicine. But I'm really excited to explore that with you. So I'm really glad you're here, and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Lovely.
It's my pleasure. So I often start by kind of inviting women to share their stories, because the kind of premise of the work that I do is that women's stories are so healing for other women. And I believe that we're all what I call archetypal remedies for each other, all holding mirrors for other people that are kind of activating for parts of us that we've maybe lost and we see in other people. So my first invitation, if you choose to accept it, is to share a little bit about your own journey, and particularly with being a witch. And I think you talked in your bio about moments of stress, illness, grief, and self-discovery and awakening. So I'm just wondering if you can share a little bit about that with us.
Yeah, sure. So thank you for inviting me on. My name is Emma, and I am a full-time witch. I've been a full-time witch really since 2020 as a business or online. So came out the broom cupboard probably then. But I've been a witch for over 27 years. My mum was a witch, so I've been brought up in this magical household and that it was all mirrored to me and taught by my mum. And I stepped into the craft because I was told that I wouldn't be able to have children by a tarot reader when I was 19 years old. And that really upset me. I know that that's just a tarot reading, but at that age, it really did bother me. So I literally stole all my mum's witchcraft books, and they were Wiccan at that stage. And I stepped fully into a Wiccan path. And from there, I obviously had my daughter, I think 2 years after that. And then 3 years after that, I had my son. And witchcraft has helped me. Well, I always say witchcraft saved my life because it kept me grounded in stressful times, and I've had many different dark times. And it's always been a tool to bring me back to the light and bring me back to who I am. And sort of coming out and sharing it on social media, I was always told, and by my mum, not to mention the word witch. Don't wear the pentagram. And this is actually my mum's pentagram. Don't ever say what we do because we'll be mocked, persecuted. You won't be able to, it'll ruin your business, all these different things. So I kept my private life as a witch very private. And I've been an artist, interior designer, and a photographer. So when I had those roles, I always kept the witchcraft side of me just at home. So yeah.
I love
But then
that.
in time,
Sorry, go on.
it's nice to actually. I didn't think it was no plan for this to turn into a business. I just thought it'd be nice to share this side of me, really as an inspiration for me. And it was nice to do photography for me instead of a client or a magazine. So I started sharing online, and it literally just blew up within a year. And people have been really interested. So it's not really been unplanned.
Yeah.
But I really do love now doing what I do because it's just who I am.
Yeah. There's
So
so much in that. I love that. I always ask people to share their
that's a
story.
very quick way of
I
telling
know.
them.
It's like as soon as somebody's sharing their story, there's like about 10 points that jump out, and I'm like, oh my God, I've got to remember them all because it's all so juicy. And I hope that I do remember them all. But what just stands out in that? There's several things that jumped out at me, but just the sense of like this kind of classic secret witch, really. Like, even though you had this amazing like ancestral wisdom passed down, and I guess in many ways, even more so, the witch wound is like really directly like in your face at that point. Because I know many listeners may be, secretly witchy, and they may not necessarily call themselves a witch. But if they're playing with, moon magic, or they're, studying herbs, or if they're, whatever feels witchy, or, they're probably resonating with that archetype, and also hiding that for the very same reasons that you've described there. Which I think just makes these conversations like so vital in many ways. And so, yeah, it's that kind of classic secret witch journey of you being, and also I really find it interesting that like so many secret witches, because of the kind of creatrix aspect, we often think of the witch as the healer, but that creatrix aspect of the witch as well is what I'm hearing in that story, like the photographer, the artist. And I think that's helpful to illuminate, because so many women at home are probably resonating with even just those bits, like the dabbling in healing, but also the creatrix. I'm going to just pause there because I've just spoken at you. So I don't know if there's any kind of twins that come in there. It feels like a good place to start. There's so many other points that I've got, but yeah, in case there's anything there that's brought alive for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think as a teenager, I did actually witness, obviously, firsthand of judgment, because when people used to come around to my home for tea and met my parents, they would mock me and say that my family is a bit weird and what I believe in is very weird. So obviously my parents sort of embraced the fact of working with the spirit world. We would do seances, Ouija boards together, we would meditate. My dad taught me about spirituality, and my mum talking about the wisdoms of the world and how we can use alchemy to sort of heal and manifest. And so it was a scary thing. And my mum actually passed at the sort of towards the end of 2020. And that's when really the social media side of stuff really did start. So people have been making an interest of what I was sort of sharing to the world. And it was funny because I always had this, I still have it now, but I have this, my mum's voice in my head saying it's not safe to share that post on Instagram or do that live or talk about what I'm talking because I'm going to get judged. And I've only had, within 5 years, 2 people message me and, say something nasty about what I do. So it's not really the actual response that my mum said I would have. I've actually had embracement, and people have also sort of been inspired to step into this path as well. So it's good.
Yeah, I love
It's been
that so much
positive.
because I do know one of the things when people are drawn to being healers, that's the number one thing is that fear of rejection, fear of judgment, fear of all that
Yeah.
sort of thing. And we could talk about
Yeah.
the witch wound, but I think it's just so interesting, isn't it? Because our ancestors and your mum and the people who like have those deep they've had those fears inbuilt,
Yeah.
but for a reason in many ways, because there obviously was a time at
Yeah.
one point where women were literally burned at the stake for being witches.
Yeah.
And yet what I
Yeah.
found, and I think what you're saying too, which is really healing, I think, for so many women to hear, is that actually, as we do learn to fully express who we are, like people will naturally be drawn to that. And I think what I often say is,
Yeah.
we have a unique remedy, and the people who need that remedy need to be able to find us. Like we have to be able to share these dark,
Yeah.
like scary aspects of ourselves that we fear that people will
Yeah.
reject us for, because those are the parts that the people who need us can find us.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. 100%.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's really powerful. It's a beautiful example of that. So I think, firstly, yeah, thank you for that golden gem
Mm.
straight away.
No, it's okay.
Mm. The other
Mm.
thing, that stood out to me, and I know we're here to talk about, how practical witchcraft and ritual can help us reclaim our self-healing power. Um, but the other
Mm.
part that stood out to me, and I think it ties into this really beautifully, actually, was the piece around like how a tarot reader told you that you wouldn't have children, and then
Yeah.
from what I remember you saying, tell me if this isn't true, but like that almost like set you off on your path.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
really did. It launched me.
Mm.
And I did it in secret, even behind my mum's back. So I went to
Ah.
this huge mind, body, and spirit fair. It was the first time I've ever been to something like that in London. And my mum and dad took me and my boyfriend, who's my husband,
Mm.
along to experience it. And I thought, oh, I'll have a tarot reading because my mum's a tarot reader, was a tarot reader.
Mm.
And this tarot reader just said, if you stay with this man, you won't have children. And although I was very young at the time, I knew I wanted to have children.
Mm.
And it kept playing on my mind. My mum and dad said, oh, it's, they should never have said that. It's kind of against the tarot rules and stuff like that. But I thought if I go and ask my mum that I want to become a witch, then my mum might sort of instill onto me her way of doing things.
Mm.
And I really wanted it to be my path and in my way,
I love
focus
that.
on fertility.
Mm.
Yeah. So I stole everything from her room and just set up, and I was doing magic every single day for 9 months before I felt pregnant. So,
Mm. Wow. So
mm,
that inspired you to, I guess what I'm hearing in that, and tell me if this feels true or not, is the sense of like this. There can often be this temptation in the secret witch to outsource.
mm,
And so what I'm hearing is
yes.
there's this almost like this tarot reader who's saying this is never going to happen for you, and you were like, well,
Yeah.
actually, I'm going to
Yeah. That's
heal
the
whatever
story of
that
my
is.
life.
And yeah, well,
Yeah.
I'm going to heal that,
Yeah.
and it is going to happen. And I think
Yeah.
that's a really powerful story as well, because what I'm hearing in that is this, it's kind of
Yeah.
set you off. Like I often think we have like an initiation of some kind. And what I'm hearing is
Yeah.
like there was an initiation of like, oh God, like this fear. And then,
Yeah.
well, actually, I'm going to go on a self-discovery journey. So I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that, because I think,
Yeah.
yeah, in
Yeah.
context as well,
I'm
in
an
terms of like,
Aquarius. I'm
yeah.
an Aquarius. I like to
Mm.
study, to be a bit geeky and visionary, but Also, I've never actually shared this on an interview before, but I've obviously done a lot of past life work on myself, and there has been a past life where I was killed as a witch, but I wasn't necessarily a witch. I was just a woman doing good, and I have sort of remembrance of that time. So I've always resonated with women and the witch wind and witchcraft. It's always felt natural to me. And obviously with on doing it, although my mum's magic is completely opposite to what I actually do, is much more different. I'm more gentle.
Yeah.
So it was something that I just thought it's calling me to step onto that path.
Yeah.
And it did feel like I was at home. It felt easy for me and natural. And even today, I will do things that I've never sort of read a book to learn it, or my mum taught me. It's come naturally to me.
Yeah.
So I always advise people, if they want to start this path, is to do things that resonate with you. There's a lot of people online telling you to do things in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I just don't feel that that's right. Everyone is different. So every witch is different.
Yeah.
You know, you have
love
to pick
that.
what resonates with you.
Yeah.
Mm.
There's so many things in that even that you've just said that I think is really juicy to unpack. But I absolutely love what you said about people finding their own way. Like we're taught like, oh, go
Yes.
and follow this quick fix and then you'll be healed, or follow this quick fix. And really, those are just projections of what has worked for other people, for the person who's telling you what to do. And so really what I see
Yeah.
witchcraft does, and what I'm hearing you say, is there's this sense of like witchcraft being about tuning into our own wisdom and finding our own source of power.
Yeah, turning into self. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I love that. So I am wondering as well, there was another piece about like the witch representing darkness, but I think this ties into this as well. I often kind of, I got my own definition of the witch, and I'm sure you have your own definition. So I was just wondering what that word means to you, because I think one of the things that you said as well that I liked was around like in not just always necessarily even being witches who call themselves witches, but you just talked about how it wasn't just necessarily a witch, but a woman. So I'm curious, like, what's your definition of a witch?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, a witch to me is any gender. That's the first thing. I think everyone thinks witches are all women, and that's not the case. To me, a witch is someone who has done a lot of work on themselves and they know who they are inside and out. They work and honor the world around them and within them, and they do good. They don't do anything bad. It's as simple as that.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah, I love that so much. So someone who's really been on a kind of self-illumination journey, self-discovery journey, and like really knows who they are and how to express that in the world ultimately for good.
Yeah. All good.
Gorgeous.
All good. No, I don't kill children or sacrifice animals or
Yeah.
you know what you see in the movies.
Yeah. I love that because
And
people's,
completely opposite.
that's people's fears though, isn't it? And I often think of the witch as
It's
like
all
I often think of the witch as a symbol. And so lots of people know the witch as like these evil characters in, in all the films and all the books. And so that's the image that is conjured up, I guess, if you like, when people think about the witch. And yet, realistically, the goal of the witch is that she's here to do good in the world. She's here to be a healer for the world.
Yeah.
And so I think that's but also that sense of fear of her darkness, I think is also reflective of, and I don't know how you feel about this, the reflective of her capacity to also be with the darkness and transmute it into light.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if there is darkness and light, and I'm very grateful for the darkness, because it's always, when you come up to the light, you learn so much, and then you expect to grow, and I really feel that's what we're here to do anyway.
Yeah.
So if I meet people who have never been in the darkness, I think, oh, that's a real shame, really, because you need to expand and grow.
Yeah, that's it. And just like we said about the initiation, I think that is how the witch calls us in many ways. Yeah, gorgeous. There was I think I also would love to hear like your version or exploration of the witch wound. Like, what do you see I guess, the witch wound is, because I think that's also helpful to break down for many people who may have heard, like, oh, well, the witch wound, but they might not necessarily
Mm.
know what it is. So I'd love to hear what
Yeah.
your feeling is around that.
Well, obviously, everyone's heard about when you talk about witches, and you will have an image of a woman burnt at the stake on fire, or being hung or tortured, or things like that. And obviously, witches in history, in the past, have been killed, and they weren't all of them actually were witches. Some of them were midwives, or herbalists, or weren't actually practicing magic. And I feel that everybody, well, Europe, America, and the UK has this fear deep in our DNA, because our ancestors are either killed, or they had the fear of, and this is for men as well, like, men would have witnessed, women being tortured and killed, taken away from their children. And so all of that fear is in our DNA.
Mm.
So in society now, especially with social media, women are sort of programmed and mirrored to be in competition with each other,
Mm.
to be a certain way, to be in this masculine energy of this hustle, which is great if that's your, authentic to you. But most women aren't like that.
Mm.
And, the witch wound will stop us from being seen, or speaking our truth, or going for that dream career, or telling their truth to their husbands or partners, or, it really does stop them in their tracks. And I've worked with thousands of women all over the world, and every single person that comes to me has the witch wound.
Mm.
And it's the
Mm.
one thing that is stopping them from reaching their aligned dream path in life.
Yeah. Yeah, I so feel
Yeah.
that. And I often talk about, you said about the DNA piece. I think it's that kind of, because but my kind of original craft, if you like, is homeopathy. And so in homeopathy, we
Mhm.
have what's called miasms. I don't know if you know anything about homeopathy, but we have like what's
Yeah.
called miasms, which is the same as in essence as like inherited DNA, inherited epigenetics. It's this kind of like the
Mm.
epigenetic kind of exploration. And so I really do feel the truth of that kind of that wound being like really embedded in our cells on a
Yeah.
cellular level.
Yeah.
This can even manifest physically, the
Yeah.
witch wound. So I think it's so important for women to kind of even just resonate with it and start to explore it as part of that self-discovery path. Yeah, so I love that.
Yeah. The
Um,
witch wound did actually turn into a cancer of the thyroid for me. So
mm,
I now red hot on the witch wound and the throat chakra because of that.
yeah.
So yeah,
Mm,
I didn't
yeah,
speak my truth.
that's huge, isn't it? And also one of that makes total sense to me because of a kind of, for me, and I don't know how you feel about this, but like I think we talked a little bit about this before we pressed record actually, is this sense of like suppression
Yeah.
being what creates and manifests illness and disease.
Yeah.
And as a
Yeah.
homeopath, that's kind of the foundation or the universal law of of magical healing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so we were talking about the kind of the importance of like expression in healing. So I'm just wondering if you can explore like how important is that for you? Because I think that point around like having cancer of the thyroid. Did you say thyroid or was it throat?
Thyroid,
Yeah,
yeah.
thyroid.
I've
Yeah.
had 3 different types of cancers, but the one in the thyroid was meant to be terminal.
Mm.
So it
Wow.
did, again, was like another going to the darkness of the pit of changing direction. So
Mm.
like when I was told I couldn't have children by a tarot reader, when the doctor said that I wouldn't, my children were young at the time, I wouldn't actually see them grow up or reach the age of 40, that really did sort of jump me onto another path. So then again, I stepped fully into herbs and working with the moon and healing and doing shadow work and
Mm.
sort of doing a lot of inner child as well, and releasing everything that I kept putting down into my body. So
Mm.
speaking up. I
Yeah.
was a people pleaser. I had 2 young children. My family is quite stressful. So my parents' side of my family were quite stressful.
Mm.
And I just said yes to everything.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
constantly it was going into obviously the energy centers of our body. And it came into like, you have to stop, Emma, you've got to speak your truth.
Yeah.
And it was really hard, really, really hard. But obviously I did do all the magic, and I actually set up, on the day I was told my cancer diagnosis, I actually set up a photography business. I went straight into creativity and working in that way. But I think about 13 years I did that. And I did heal myself. And without witchcraft, I wouldn't be here for that.
That's phenomenal. Yeah. That is really phenomenal. And that's such a great
Yeah.
example of the way that I see the world working. And it's such a radically different like seeing.
Yeah.
I say this to
Yeah.
my partner the other
It's
day.
evident.
I was saying this to my partner. I was like, I just don't see the world the way that everybody else does. I
Yeah.
was like,
You see much
I was
more.
like, yeah, exactly. I was like, it's like I've got this oracle wisdom that's just like in another plane, and like everybody else
Yeah.
is over here. I'm like,
Yeah.
no, that's not how it works. It's like this.
No,
And so it's really
exactly.
gorgeous to hear somebody else who's, and often, this
Yeah.
podcast is a great example of many people who do see the world the same way, but I think it's just so powerful. And I'm
Well,
really,
stress, I really feel, stress is the biggest thing that affects us. It can cause depression, anxiety, cancer, other illnesses.
yeah.
It's the worst thing.
But what's really interesting, homeopathically about what you just shared is, and interestingly, I always try and figure out people's remedies whilst I'm on a podcast with them, and I'm just wondering if this ties into yours. Is that the cancer miasm? So the kind of the cancer miasm. I've already explained what a miasm is, but is very much around suppression. So it makes sense to me that when we suppress ourselves and we are in that kind of witch wound, that would manifest that way. And that's just such a, I don't think I've ever shared that on a podcast before, actually, because it just seems like such a wild, like, thing to say in many ways.
And I believe it goes to an energy center that's where you're wounded. So if it's heartache or pain and things like that, you'll have breast cancer or lung cancer or something here. Go to the center that needs the work.
But what's beautiful about that story, because it's like in many ways, there's a lot in that. There's it's dark in terms of like the initiation of it. And my own initiation was one of illness, but mine was like chronic fatigue, and homeopathically we often see that as like a little bit before that next phase of going into a deeper pathology. But what's beautiful, I think, about it is that woke you up, and that you were then able to heal yourself. And I'm curious, like, how do you see that was that you healed yourself?
It's almost like you have like a flash of movies in your mind, and you have suddenly this like epiphany, like a spiritual awakening. I've had many spiritual awakenings where you see what you're doing to yourself. So you take full responsibility of why you're in this situation. It's not someone else's fault necessarily, you've been dealing with it and suppressing it all. And then I just literally just like a switch, I almost wiped those movies out and thought, no, I'm going to see my two little kids go, to learn to drive and go to university. It was well before, I think my daughter was 7 at the time. So I kept putting these visualizations that she would learn to drive, and I'd give her a hug when she's learned to drive and give her the car keys, and I'd see myself go to prom and things like that. And I did a lot of banishing, letting go, releasing rituals. And I learned that in order to manifest, we have to let go first. It's like a quick fix of manifesting, write it on a bay leaf, and then, if you don't heal what's behind it, you're never going to get. It'll take a long, long, long time. I didn't have time on me. So, I had to really focus, but also step into a career that was fun for me. And that's the creativity is how, because I'm very dyslexic, it's how I communicated with the world. So it was a perfect action for me.
So again, another 5 weeks in that's just come out. Like there's a whole piece around the witch being like neurodivergent in some way, which we could go down a rabbit hole of. But But I think what I'm hearing in that is several things. The first one is like really owning our power. Like this isn't about what other people, or, this isn't something that's happening to me. Like there's a sense of like really owning your power. And I also heard like making a choice. It's almost like I often think of it as like an energetic choice making. Like this is what I'm here for. This is what's going to happen. Like what I'm being told is irrelevant. Like this is what I'm here to.
It's always two fingers up at the doctor. And I do think as well, especially for women who have young children and you're married and you're looking after your husband, the home and your children, you almost lose your identity of who you are. So it was a moment of reclaiming of not that I'm not the wife, I'm not the mother, I'm Emma. So what does Emma want? And as women, we never really do that. So it's really important. So that actual cancer diagnosis really did return me back to home and to work out, why am I here?
I love
not wait for the minute.
So like a really radical choice into tending you and what you needed. And
it's hard when you're a mum. We're not told to do that. We've got to put everybody else first.
And I think, what's your sense of what the reason for that is? Because it's one of those things, isn't it, where we think, oh no, I can't prioritize myself because that's selfish. But what I'm hearing in your story,
I think it's mirrored. It's constantly mirrored to, or this perfect life in a romantic comedy or documentary or on social media, and that's another reason why I decided as well, because I was working in obviously content creation and editorial work. I knew that when I started my Instagram that I would keep everything real and share that. If I was going to mirror, then it's got to be 100% who I am. That's really important.
And really what I'm hearing is, it's not selfish because you sustained your own life and now are able to...
You become a better mum.
Exactly.
You become a better wife, and you find out who you are, and that brings you the greatest gift of a self-awareness, and that's been beautiful.
I love that so much. The other piece that stood out to me that you said about how you healed was around like almost like the visioning, the magic piece, the manifestation piece, I guess you could say. And I loved what you said around, particularly around like the releasing piece. And I think you mentioned shadow work, which is something that is like
shadow work in child.
Shadow work in child work. And I think that is so vital to me. And often, as you said, again, manifestation always becomes this sticky plaster quick fix again. In many places. Exactly. And so I think that's also a really important point, because again, the witch is here to look at the darkness, to look at the shadows. And so this is why, again, she can be so healing in my mind. So I love that you see manifesting that way as well. Like it's like, no, you need to look at them.
As a witch, I probably do more banishing work than I do manifestation work. I'm constantly working on myself. Something that I think we'll always do.
Amazing. So let me just see through some of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about, see what else there was. I think we've had a really gorgeous deep dive into suppression there. And also, funnily enough, I've got suppression and then manifestation. Not expressing our emotions leads to physical manifestation of health. I totally created that vision already. I guess some of the other things that I wanted to talk to you about was like, I guess the more practical things. So if people are listening and they're like, okay, like I really want to heal myself, like how do we work with witchcraft practically and ritual and all of those sorts of things? And I think as well as that, the kind of more practical things that you often talk about, I heard in kind of when I was reading about you earlier, was kind of like sisterhood, ritual, nature, soul reclamation, seasonal living, or reclaiming the ancient wisdom of our ancestors. So all of the above, all the juicy stuff. Like, how do we work with that? And give it to us in life. Give us all the stuff in the last however long we've got.
I think the first place to start is, I think most people, when they ask me, it's kind of question, they expect it's going to be this elaborate, get the cauldron out, all the candles and salt, and it's really very simple. You need a notebook and a pen, and you need to be present with yourself. So I've always found that I like big church white candles.
Mm.
And there's something magical that when you set a table and you're in your favorite outfit and you've got your slippers on, you bring a nice cup of tea, light that white candle and just take a couple of breaths. And when you feel yourself in that moment, in that present space within your home or out in nature, and when you light that white candle, I know that it signals to my subconscious that I'm about to do something sacred, so my energy will drop. So I'm already set. And then I would just journal. I'll find out, what am I struggling with? What trauma am I holding on to? Where do I feel it in my body? Where has it come from? Because it's not that you've done it to, you've done this to yourself. It's come from something. It's come from a reaction or a silly remark or something like that. You need to go back through the path to find out where this has come from. So I would do that first. I would also look at all of the limited beliefs that are connected to the trauma. And some of these stories aren't really yours. They're ways of learning how to survive, really, or fit into society or follow your peers or your parents. So I would look at your limited beliefs. And then I would put them then into a very simple list. And you can use water for emotional release, or you can use fire for activating or banishing. But also you can use earth to dig deep and bury your what you want to release. But I would personally use fire so you can actually see a reaction, so you see it is strong. And I would take moments of feeling. It's all to do with the feeling, the magic's within us. All the tools that I would use and the herb just amplifies the energy. But the power and the magic comes from our soul as the witch. So it's about feeling what you want to release. And it's not like a quick fix. It's like really feel it. So you're crying. So you have like a, not a very nice day. So that you want to actually go through this and actually get this out of your body and soul. And then I would burn that. But I would also keep a copy of that in my journal so that I could look back and see how I've grown. So I would do that. You could also have, those little tea light candles. You don't have to have the cauldron and all this stuff, but most people have a tea light candle. And the beauty of them is that you can actually pull the wax out and have this wonderful little cauldron or dish that you could actually write a letter of forgiveness to yourself or gratitude or, something nice after you've bent all of that and you've been crying. You can actually write something really nice to yourself, fold that towards you and place that in that little silver dish. You can sprinkle some chamomile, some lavender or some rose petals, something like that, or a little drop of honey on there. Put the candle back on and light it with intention that you actually start to love yourself, returning back to yourself and like who you're becoming, that you should have become when you were born. So that's a simple, very simple ways of doing it. What else did you ask me about the moons? I mean, there's so much you can do. You can do things on the different phases. I normally would use a couple of days after a full moon and do a lot of banishing work. And I only use the new moon for really sort of just feeling into intentions, but it's that lovely 10 days. The 10 of the new moon is my sort of like 2-week, 10-day period within a month. That is my go, go, go. And we have cycles within us. We're women. So I like to work with cycles each month with the moon. So I don't have this go, go, go all throughout the month. I would only do like interviews around a certain time, or I would launch something or go out socially. But then in the darkness, I will allow that hibernation time.
Yeah.
And that's really important.
Yeah. There's
We
so
can't
much on this.
go all the time.
There's so much in that, isn't there, as well? I'm going to talk to a few different things that I heard you speak to in that. And I guess the first thing is that there's no right and wrong.
Yeah.
And it's like very intuitive. And this really aligns with the way that I see the world as well. It's like there's just this, being guided by what's within and like and the kind of seasonality of things as well. But like ultimately, I think a lot of people who would resonate with being secret witches we often have
Mm.
this because we've been used to masking ourselves. It often comes in with that neurodivergence
Yeah.
piece as well as
Yeah.
witches. We've been used to fitting in. And so we've kind of learned
Mhm.
somewhere along the way, like, oh, there's a right way to do life. There's a right way to do life.
Yeah.
And I need the answers to what the right way is. And yet, so that's
Mhm.
one of the things I think we can struggle with. And I struggled with as well when I kind of started kind of bringing my witch into the world and embodying her, was like this sense of,
Mm.
oh, I'm going to get it wrong. And I think that's so freeing
Yeah.
to hear, like,
Yeah.
actually, there's no wrong.
Yeah.
Like, this is all about
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
following. Mm,
Everyone get unique path.
mm,
So something won't resonate, and also you're a different person. So I think that also gives you confidence. Like I never was frightened to share my knowledge online. So I wasn't
mm,
worried about being seen that way because it's from my experience. So I knew that
yes.
that's my truth. So
Hmm.
no one can say, Emma, you're doing that wrong because that's how I do it. That's me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It gives you that nice sort of hug and confidence to be able to start sharing that. And
Yeah.
if you have a journal, document everything that resonates with you, then you put your own little book of magic that you can work
Mm.
with, your experiences.
I love it. Yeah. I think that's
Mm.
really important, actually, that piece around journaling, around how your experience of magic has
Yeah,
gone, like what's worked for
yeah,
you. And I think there's so much permission giving in other people offering, like, okay, here's a way to try something, because,
yeah,
if we are worried about getting it wrong, like we can use that as a bit of a play, and we can
yeah,
go, okay, we'll play this one, see how that goes, and
yeah,
then intuit from there. So yeah,
yeah,
I love what you said there. The other thing that stood out to me is, like, this isn't necessarily just a logical thing. Like, this is about feeling into our body, feeling into our emotions. And I think that's also really powerful to illuminate more about. And I'm wondering if there's anything you want to kind of add to that exploration. Like, how important is the body and tuning to our emotions in self-healing?
yeah. I think because of my personal experience with health and stuff, I think that's probably one of my biggest things. I have to allow myself space to be in the present more than anything else within my day. So, lots of women come to me and say, well, I've got 4 children, I'm really busy. And, even if you have that cup of tea and you're watching your kids play, you can take a moment just to place your left hand on your heart, call yourself back into your body and ask, where am I stressed? Where am I tense? What energy center is that near? How am I feeling? And just reflect. And that puts you into yourself and you're in the present moment instead of thinking of washing or cooking or,
Yeah.
stuff like that. But
I
it's
love
very,
that.
very important.
I think the other
You
thing
can't
that
be a witch if you're not in the present moment because that's where the
no,
intent.
that's what I was gonna
Mm.
say. It's like what I'm hearing you speak to is presence.
Mm.
Presence with the
Yeah,
body, presence in everything. And I think
yeah.
there's almost this sense, I know when I've been guiding women in journeys, there's always been this sense of like, oh, I've got to carve out like half an hour or an hour and be in the work
And
then.
you
And it's
do.
like, actually, we can just weave it in. It's also what I'm
Yeah.
hearing you give permission
I mean,
for.
my kids are adults now, so I am at home with my dogs and my husband. And, sometimes, if you're busy or have been holding space with people all day, but I still want to do some magic or a ritual or a spell or something, if I'm tired and I can do something really quick and easy, and that could even be sitting in the bath and just going back inwards to myself and setting my intention, don't have to have all the tools. But then sometimes I want to do something that's fun and visually, because I'm very creative. I like to
Mm,
see it all and, touch the flowers and the wax colors and, move herbs around. I might want to do that. But this
mm.
doesn't mean it's right or wrong. Then, the magic's still going to be just as powerful if I just lit a tea light candle with nothing on it,
I
you know?
love that. That's so permission giving to all the busy secret witches
Yeah,
at home. Like, because,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, that time. Always have time, just for
yeah,
me.
yeah. No, I love that. That's
Mm,
really gorgeous. There was something else that stood out to me. Oh, I know what it was. There was something around you said that made me think about, I think you said the word love, actually. Like, it's ultimately about loving ourselves. And
yeah,
I often say the exact same thing. It's like we love ourselves back to wholeness, to who we originally were before all of this
yeah,
conditioning. And I'm
yeah,
wondering if
it's
you
really
can
hard.
speak to that a little bit in kind of
Yeah,
reclaiming our self healing power. The other thing, actually, as I asked that question, that reminds me is that he said something about I can't remember what you said now, but there was something that made me think of what I call soft power. And this, I think it was about the feminine and kind of being in that kind of,
The flying.
yeah, yeah. And it's
Yeah,
just
it's a bit
like,
of
we
a
often think of,
hassle.
yeah, we often think of power as being this kind of very masculine, like, right, push, force, hustle our
Yeah.
way through. And actually, the
Yeah.
witch for me symbolizes like that softer
Mm.
power. So I'm just wondering if anything
Yeah.
sparks anything.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I mean, my mum was more of a masculine power witch. Her magic was more different, where mine was more self-love, healing, fertility, and more gentle, much more feminine. But I think we need to have both of these energies. There's nothing wrong with masculine or feminine, but we do need to have these energies. But I feel most women are more with the flow. They don't want to do the hustle or these horrible things on social media where they're saying the self-employed female entrepreneurs to reach a 30K month, and then they think that's normal,
Yeah.
and it's not.
Mm.
It could be a lie, it could be, and that's the masculine energy that I don't like, where we might want to want to be a healer or have a spiritual business or be a witch as a business and just help people and just go with the flow and make it feel at ease. That's more sort of suitable for our own energy.
And our
Um,
physiology as well, in many ways, that sense of,
yeah,
I often say,
definitely.
that, we're feminine as women, we're in a feminine body
Yeah.
and we're kind of physiologically built to receive. And like,
Yeah,
there's,
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
receive and create, and I think the self-love part, I think, is a constant thing for women to work on. I mean, I'm going to be 49 next month, and I think really now, after journaling actually a couple of days ago, I thought, actually right now as I'm going into being 50, that I never thought I would ever be into that decade. I actually do love who I am. So it takes a long time to get there. And I know in my 50s, I'll probably have to work at that as well.
Mm.
But I think it's just even allowing us to think, something nice about ourselves.
Yeah.
That's a good start.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love your honesty, about the piece around that. It takes time. I think that's so refreshing
Yeah.
because I often say that as well. Like, this isn't, this isn't a quick fix. Like, this is going to
No,
take, like, this is
yeah.
a work of a
I mean,
lifetime.
so many
Anyways,
people, so many
or
people have
several.
said to me, "Oh, you obviously switched on, and you obviously don't have any problems." I'm like, no, you're constantly, you have to constantly work at yourself. The only
Yeah.
difference is I have greater awareness of self than I ever have done, and
And
that's
how to
the
navigate the problems as well.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
kind of wisdom around how to kind of
yeah,
work with those problems as well, as what I'm
yeah,
hearing.
yeah. And I didn't have that when I was 20 or 30. I have that now
Yeah.
because of life.
Yeah.
You know.
That's
Mm.
amazing. Yeah. Oh, gorgeous. Um,
Mm.
I am just wondering, in terms of other questions, let me just see what else there was that I wanted to ask you about. Because we talked about the kind of practical witchcraft piece. I'm wondering, because you talk a lot about the ancient wisdom of our ancestors, and I'm wondering if you can explain a little bit more about that and what you mean by that. And I guess we probably already covered it to a degree, but I think if there's anything to add around that.
So, yeah, our ancestors would have gathered with other women around a fire, made the home, got the food ready, looked after all the children. And it wouldn't just be necessarily the mum of their children, it'd be other women as well helping bringing up this village of children, while the men would go off and hunt and work and, stuff like that. And around a fire, women would share stories that would help each other and would, help educate other children. And that's a beautiful sisterhood.
Mm.
And I love it now that when we can get into women's circles or day retreats, or when you bring these women together and help them feel safe, create a space to hold them. The beauty of a true sisterhood is just incredible.
Yeah.
And it does feel like a remembering, like you feel like you need it. Women do need this. And sharing stories without judgment, making true friends that lift each other up. And it's really important. So I'm just like to tap into how our ancestors were and how our ancestors would move through a year in with the seasons, again with this rush or hibernate or slow down, or I live my life around that. And I think that's, it just feels like sense to me
Yeah.
to be
Yeah,
in
me
that
too.
way.
Me too.
Yeah.
I love everything that you've just said. So there's like a real honoring of the ancient wisdom that's been passed down,
Right.
or not being passed down, as it were, for many of
Yeah.
us. But I'm really feeling what you said about the sisterhood. Like for me, that's always been my experience too. Is as we come together, particularly in sisterhood with women who are like us, I think as well, or whoever
Yeah.
if we're men, then
Yeah.
men as well. Um,
Yeah.
but for me, like that power of sisterhood and seeing is particularly for witches, I think, because for witches, I think there's also
Yeah.
that sense of like, oh my God, that's the last thing I want. It's like we're so used to fearing being judged. It's like, no, I don't want to be
Yeah.
around people. But when we actually step in
Yeah.
and have courage to step into that, because I think it takes so
It
much
takes a lot of
courage to
courage.
do that.
Yeah.
But when we
Yeah.
start to step into that, there's so much healing that happens.
Yeah.
And it is that
Yeah. I love
reclamation.
watching it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that
Yeah.
reclamation of
I always get
life.
excited if someone was turned up on her own and has never been to such an event, and she walks in that room, and you just think, wow, that is such a, a really scary thing to do. And you really, just feel so proud of them. And then you watch them by the end of like a couple of hours have gone past, and they've literally taken the first step to return home to themselves and open up.
Yeah. That's so huge. I really feel that
Yeah.
the reclamation of the ancient wisdom in that, actually. I love
Yeah.
how you've described that. Is that just that returning home as well? I loved how you said that.
Yeah.
It's like this sense of
Yeah.
just coming back to ourselves in the presence of others. And
Yeah.
it ties very much into, I'm a huge believer in sisterhood. For the way that I work in groups is I often see that they're like, we're mirroring stuff for each other. And I think that
Yeah.
group work is so potent for that self-discovery process. It's like
Yeah.
we're all being
Yeah.
remedies for each other. So it
Yeah.
feels just so important and something that we're so disconnected from in our
Yeah.
culture in many ways.
Right. Yeah. It's sad.
Mm,
Mm.
yeah. I would love to know, because you've just written a new book called The Witch's Way Home, very aptly,
Yeah.
as we were just talking about home. I would love to know a little bit more about that. Like, what's the book about? Who's it for? How can it help? What does it guide us through?
Yeah. Well, you don't have to be a witch to read my book. That's the best thing.
Mm.
It is a roadmap of self-discovery, and it's definitely the book I wish I had at the start of my path. 100%. It's not just spells and ritual. There are things like that in there, and there's some exercises, but I actually talk about all the different dimensions that we have around us and within us, how we can work with nature and the spirit world and higher dimensions. I also explain how to return home to yourself and do the shadow work and the healing with mind, body, and spirit. And then it goes right way through to actually starting, which starts your path at the beginning, but as you move towards the last chapter, you then start to step into becoming the witch. So at the end, there is an initiation whole piece there of how to initiate yourself.
Mm.
And as a pre-order bonus, when this came out in October, I actually offered a live initiation, and 262 women joined all over the world. It's beautiful. I cried to become witch.
Yeah, I love that. That's
It
absolutely
was
gorgeous.
lovely.
I love that you
Yeah.
share you don't have to be a witch to engage with it. I often kind of
Yeah.
feel the same way about The Secret Witch. And although it's, the podcast is called The Secret Witch Show, some people can have deep resistance to the word witch for the societal
Yeah,
reasons
the word
we
witch.
talked about. Yeah, exactly. And so
Yeah.
I often feel the same, is that ultimately the witch is a symbol for magic, power, truth, true expression. And so I love that you've shared that, because I think so many women can often feel that deep resistance, but also simultaneously be like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, that's me. It's like,
Yeah.
that's me, but I'm not
Buy
going
it
to tell anyone.
secretly.
Yeah, exactly. All the
Yeah.
secret witches going to be buying the witch's way home
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. But
Yeah.
that sounds gorgeous. So
Yeah. And then this year in autumn, I've got an oracle deck coming out that goes alongside the book.
yeah.
That is going to be amazing. It's like nothing else. It's really cool.
Oh, I'm
Mhm.
excited to see that when it comes out.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, is there anything else that you'd like to explore actually before, because we're just about coming up to completion time? Is there anything else that
Mm.
you want to particularly add, or any particular piece of wisdom that you want to impart as like the final thing that's like the most important thing you would say to someone who is?
Yeah, probably the most important thing really is to find your authentic self, because when you live in that way, and you live intentionally, you'll be able to deal with setting boundaries, dealing with your mental health, dealing with things that don't serve you. But then also you can manifest, and when you're in your authentic path, choose yourself, everything's just going to flow to you. The
Mm,
universe will help you.
mm,
And that's we signed up to do that. We wear our authentic self to the age of 4 or 7. So our whole mission is just to return back to that
yeah.
and step on our true path.
Yeah, I love that. And it reminds me of this sense of like, it's never easy to choose, like choosing that,
Mm.
choosing what's true for our souls, choosing soul
Yeah.
alignment often requires
Yeah.
like really deep, just to move through levels of fear that
Yeah.
you know, we feel we
Yeah.
can't. But it
Yeah.
has,
Yeah. Well,
as you
fear,
said,
fear is great. Yeah,
yeah.
I love it if I feel fear or anxiety, because I know then that I have to step through that,
Mm, mm,
because it's not necessary why I'm feeling fear. It might not actually be my truth. It might be because my mum's told me or someone else has told me that that's going to happen.
yeah.
That you step through that door of fear, one, to grow, but also to create your own evidence.
Yeah. No, I love that too.
It's absolutely
It's almost
fine.
like fear's just a doorway in many ways to show
Yeah.
you even more about
Useful.
yourself. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but it is something that we often face. And yet it's been my experience, as you said, that as the more you choose your own path, the more you choose soul,
Yeah.
the more
Yeah.
that we get rewarded for that choice. And it's just not
Yeah.
something that we're taught. We're not taught like, oh,
Yeah.
okay, just be
No.
you, and then
No.
you'll get, the universe will be
No,
like,
you'll be
okay,
fine.
cool, off you go.
Yeah.
It's taught this next part. Like that's not what
Yeah.
we're taught. And so we doubt that. And
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest things to choose to walk through
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
fear, and then seeing that we are rewarded for that. So I love that, Gem, as we complete.
Yeah.
Mm. Gorgeous.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
I would love to firstly thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'd love
Right.
to know as well, like you've already talked about your Oracle deck. Is there anything else you're working on? And also where can people find out more about you?
Well, because it's January, end of January, I'm sort of like feeling into what I want to bring into for this year. So
Mm.
it'll probably be March when I start blooming things like that. But you can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, all at Emma Griffin Witch. And my website is Emma Griffin Witch. So yeah.
Perfect. Amazing. Well, we'll include that in all the show notes and everything. But thank you
Okay.
so much for sharing your wisdom with us. I think this is going to be a really gorgeous, juicy episode for our listeners. And yeah, just so nice to meet you.
It's lovely to meet you too. Thank you.
That was, as ever, a really gorgeous episode. Particularly, what stood out to me was the way that the wisdom that Emma serves has been really passed down, which is quite unique. Here are my takeaways. Witchcraft can save our lives, literally. By embracing the power, magic, and authenticity of the witch, we can heal on all different levels, including physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Whether we are witches or not, the root of healing is really by healing our suppression and suppressed trauma and reclaiming our authentic voices, which the witch wound holds a mirror to. To heal requires us to face the witch wound. We have to overcome societal judgment and fear of being a witch and sharing our true, authentic self-expression. We must embrace the ancient wisdom of our ancestors. They knew that the real root of healing is through storytelling around the fire, ritual, creativity, presence, seasonal living, sisterhood, and self-discovery, and all the witchy things. There's no right or wrong in practical witchcraft and ritual. It's really individualized and intuitive, and we can play with things to see what works for us and keep a journal of discovery to note what does and what doesn't. As we do bravely own who we are, whether that's a witch or something else, We connect more deeply to those who are like us, including our dream clients if we are here to be healers. Ritual and witchcraft practices do not have to be long and elaborate. We can weave them into our day just by bringing ourselves to presence and setting intentions.